So we said we'd start at 2, it's 2:01, so let's get cracking. Hello, my name's Caroline Theobald, for those of you who don't know me, and on behalf of the directors of the North East Initiative on Business Ethics, NIBE for short, I'd like to say a very, very warm welcome to the launch of our Ethical Business Toolkit. It's great, actually. I've looked at the attendance list, and it's great to see so many people from so many different walks of life. Startups, corporates, professionals, self-employed, the community, universities, schools and students. So what a lovely broad church that we're launching this into. But first, a bit about NIBE, because even though we've been going for a bit, people don't know who we are. So just to put that straight, we're a group of volunteers who got together to get people thinking and talking about the importance of business ethics in 2013. We hold events, run campaigns, which are informed always by the needs of the business community, and work through partnerships. Our goal is to collaborate with businesses, universities and schools throughout the North East region, and I mean from Berwick down to the Tees, to inform and educate about the benefits of ethical business practice. Our long-term aim is to make the North East known as a place for good business in every sense. But as I think you all know, ethics is difficult. It's not a one-size-fits-all subject. Mine might be and probably are very different from yours. We also know, having talked to lots of businesses, that people really grapple with what it means to and for them and their businesses. They also ask, well, what are the benefits? What are the benefits of behaving ethically in business? So with the help of the business community, we put together a toolkit to help people think through what business ethics means and, very importantly, how it can be measured. Phil Jackman, one of my other co-directors at NIBE, will tell you more about that. But the purpose is to make individual journeys to better business practice a little easier. Before we get to that, I'd like to introduce you to Graham Whitfield, a name and face probably known to a lot of you, the business editor of the Journal. Graham has been a long-term supporter of ours, of NIBE's. Indeed, one of the very first events he came to in his role as the business editor of the Journal was our Pay Fair campaign back in 2014. Since then, he's used his weekly column to castigate poor business behaviour and praise those who are trying to do the right thing. Graham, over to you. Why is business ethics so important?
Well, that's a good open question. Thanks, Caroline. It's nice to be here. And yes, you're right. The launch of the Pay Fair campaign with NIBE was one of the first things I did as a business editor. I've been on the news desk at the Journal, and I came across the business. And the first thing I did was go to an event at Castle University's Business School where we launched Pay Fair, which was all about late payment. And I remember thinking at the time, this is quite worthy, but a bit dull. And I tell you that just to show that I am, frequently wrong on so many matters, and I was on that because, of course, I think NIBE and the Journal, to an extent, we were ahead of the game. Of course, late payment has become a real issue that's central to business conversations. The government's now got a small business commissioner, which makes that one of its main issues. And I remember at the time thinking how bizarre it was. I'd come from not in the business world, and how bizarre it was that what you had was big companies with lots of money, withholding payments to smaller companies, just bullying, really, supply chain bullying, and we raised that issue for about a year, and I think it made a difference, and really NIBE set the agenda there where others have followed, and that's to the credit of Caroline and Glyn, who was working with her at the time, and Brian, my former editor. We write a lot about ethics in business in the Journal and our other titles, both good and bad. And I was totting up a few examples of both of those that I can think of in the last year or so, during the pandemic. And you've got, on the good side, you've got Barber making PPE, Nissan making PPE. You've got Northumbrian Water, who've helped us with our Laptops for Kids campaign. Of course, on the bad side, you've got some of these companies who've taken huge payments for not supplying PPE. You've got the school lunch debacle from a few weeks ago. That's what got me writing about this recently. But of course, it goes before. There's any number of examples of. You can go to the Volkswagen emissions scandal. You can look at Carillion. These companies that behave badly, that hit the headlines and give the whole business community a bad name. And I wrote about this, and I was chatting to Caroline when the school lunch thing hit social media, and you sort of think, I'm sure lots of us looked at those pictures of those school lunches and saw, half a carrot wrapped in cling film, half a pepper, and you think, how much money have you saved by what do carrots cost? About 10 pence each. How much money have you saved by chopping a carrot in half? Compare that to the reputational damage that Chartwells have had as a result, and you can see the cost of bad behaviour. And I suspect that I can't prove this in either way, that this was just somebody thinking, oh great, I've saved a bit of money here, and no one in that big organisation, that huge big organisation, had the nous to just say, that's daft. We're saving out there. We're saving. It's not worth. You look at Volkswagen, for example. They thought they could get away with it with those emission scams, and of course, it's cost them billions, and there are people gone to jail as a result. So why be good? Now, listen, I've never run a business in my life, and it's a good job because it would go bust within weeks. So those of you who do, I take my hat off to you, and I'm not, I wouldn't tell you how to do that. But why should businesses behave ethically? And I think there's three reasons. One of them is just the moral thing of, well, you just should do, you should do the right thing. I was brought up to do the right thing, and I think, in business you should as well. But the other two, I think there are good business reasons for doing the right thing. One of them is that it just creates a better business environment. To go back to the late payment issue, one of the problems with late payments is that the big companies withhold money from the medium-sized companies, who withhold money from the small companies who go bust. And of course, it's just a vicious circle. Whereas if everyone pays on time and does the right thing, it's a virtuous circle. So there are good bottom line reasons for doing those sorts of things well. And the other one is, and there's plenty of research which shows that doing the right thing in all sorts of ways, in diversity, in hiring, in the way you treat your customers, it just it pays off in terms of in your financial results. And I'm sure I can point to any number of companies who break that rule. Nobody would say, I don't know how many Newcastle fans we've got in here. There's not many Mike Ashley fans, and nobody would say that Sports Direct or Fraser's Group, as it is now, is a ethical company, I suspect, but it does pretty well. But also, I think there's plenty of examples of those things. Arcadia Group is now in administration, and you think, well, and not many people shed too many tears over that because of the way Philip Green's acted over the years. So I think there's just so many good arguments for acting ethically. Like I say, I don't run a business, and I never could, so I wouldn't want to tell people how to do that. But I think what NIBE are doing in providing a sort of toolkit for ethical behaviours is a really great step. And so I commend Caroline and Phil on their work on that. And as I have done over the last 7 years, I think NIBE are a great organisation to make that argument for ethics within the region.
That's wonderful, Graham, and absolutely on time. Of course, it's team, it's the NIBE team effort, and indeed the business community who really helped put us together, because you know, we thought it was really important, and we've always thought it was important. You know, listen to what people are telling you, particularly those who are known as good businesses. So what I like to do now, if I may, is to bring three of the people who were intimately involved in putting the toolkit together, Adam, Phil and Rachel, and just ask them some questions about, you know, why we did it, why we thought it was an important thing to launch an ethical business toolkit, how it works, where people can find it, how they can give feedback and all of those things. Glyn, I'd like to, not Glyn, sorry, Phil, I'd like to start with you, please. If you could just cover the generalities, you know, what is it? What was our motivation and what was the process? A bit more about the process.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. First of all, I've been called worse. There you go. But so I think you started off by saying, look, my ethics might be different to yours. And I think Graham highlighted how it's difficult to identify what is an ethical company. It's a sort of feeling that we have. And we were thinking amongst ourselves as a group how difficult it was to demonstrate whether you were an ethical company or not, and how really it's a minefield to work through in terms of understanding what the position that you're trying to do, and measuring other companies as being ethical or not. And that goes to thinking about, is there a way of creating a toolkit that allows people to go through that, I know it's a much hyped word, but journey to try and understand. And so we engaged with business in general. We surveyed quite a lot of companies to understand where they were in terms of ethics, and brought some of that best practice together into 5-module toolkit. The first module really answers that fundamental question of what do you mean by ethics? And it's because if you can't articulate what you mean, it's very difficult for others to understand your position. And then we have the second module is around what other people within industry are doing, within business are doing in terms of demonstrating how ethical they be. Then we have 2 modules on measurement, one measuring the measurable, and then the second measuring the unmeasurable, things like what people are thinking about you, your social media, that kind of sentiment analysis. And then in the final module, it brings it all together in okay, let's create an action plan of how you're going to address this. So it's a way, I think, of using the toolkit to demonstrate what your position is in terms of ethics, and that allows other people to judge whether they share the same ethics or not.
Thanks for that, Phil. And it's wonderfully easy to find, isn't it? Because it's boom on our website at the minute. We'll come to that. Yeah.
It's right on bang on the front screen of the website, right at the top, it says Ethical Toolkit.
So I think, Adam, could you go through that, you know, as it is on the website, how do people get hold of it? And how do we use the technology, and how do we make it easy? How have we made it easy?
Sure. I hope we've made it easy. I'm going to just show a few screenshots. Phil, if you can give me access. There we go. Yeah, so as Phil mentioned, you can find it on the NIBE website, but you can also access it through businessethics.toolkit.com. So if you want to note that that URL down, I'll put it on again at the end. So that'll take you direct to the toolkit. Can you see my screen there? Is that working?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So yeah, I think we thought it would be important to create an online version of the toolkit in order to allow people to kind of access it anywhere, anytime, and be able to kind of come in and come out of it. It could be quite a long process if you want to go through everything in the toolkit. But when we were speaking with the group together, we felt that it would be important to spend some time, then come back to things, reflect on them. So you can access it online at that web address there. One second, sorry. I've got a few screenshots here. So this is the welcome screen. It literally, you can get started straight away. Each module has various different sort of elements to it, but the first thing that you'll find on each module is a video. Phil, myself, Rachel and others have all created a video that represents and introduces each of the modules. Then within each of the modules there's some reading, but there's also clearly some exercises to work through. We haven't gone down the line of being able to do all of those exercises online, so it's not kind of something that you'll spend lots of time, in the screen. We'd expect that you'd spend that time with yourself, pen and paper, your team, whatever it might be, depending on the various different exercises that are there. But there is a sort of easy to navigate section where you can access any bit of the toolkit and skip through the various pages, jump between different exercises, and look at the different modules. So hopefully that's it's relatively easy to work your way around and work your way through it. If you want to go from start to end, but some people might have done a lot of thinking and therefore be further in their thinking and want to move further on into other modules, as Phil described before. You can save your progress. So at any point, if you want to go away and think about something else, or come back to another point, you can save your progress. You can put your email address in there and it'll send you an email, and that means you can come back to the toolkit at any point. At the end of each module, there's basically a space for reflections. Now, those can be reflections primarily for yourself to take some note down. You can get an email of those sent to you after you've finished the toolkit. But also we're keen to hear any reflections you might have. All of this is anonymous, even though it takes your email address. It only uses that to send you the form. So any reflections and feedback sent to us is completely anonymous. This is obviously a new process, and while it has been looked at and tested by a few people, we really want to hear people's feedback as they go through it and see how, both in terms of the content and also in terms of the online system and how it can be used. It's very much early stages, and we'd love to iterate on top of it and improve it as people give it a go. And the other bit that we've got is just a rating, which again just helps us to understand how you found working through that module and provide the feedback. If you have more detailed feedback that you can provide, by all means, you can contact through the NIBE website, and the contact page. There's an email address on there as well. But as I say, this really needs to be honed and perfected, we hope, over time with input from business and organisations that are actually using it. So there's the web address again. Hopefully it's easy to find, easy to use, and if anyone has any questions, let us know.
That's great, Adam. Thanks so much. And actually, it's wonderful because the next bit, the segue, things working today, is actually to ask Rachel to how we have been involving businesses in the design of this all the way along. So, Rachel, can you talk about how we involve people, rationale behind the videos that Adam's just mentioned, and why it was designed as it is?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to talk about why it's meaningful, why it's important, and why I think you should all have a go at it as well. So just to put in a bit of context, because I don't recognise quite a few of you in the room, which is brilliant. I'm Hort, so I'm the Culture Vulture. I'm a professional cultural adventurer and champion of the North. And I'm also a director at NIBE and a professional marketeer. I'm incredibly socially engaged. I'm motivated by what feels right to me. I consider myself an activist and have strong focus like that in my business. I'm telling you this because this is what I brought to the table in terms of developing the NIBE toolkit. It comes as no surprise that obviously I'm really focused and interested in human behavior as a marketeer, motivation, the difference between what people say and do, encouraging open and respectful conversation over points of active difference or inaction to broaden my own understanding. My ambition for the toolkit is just that. It's a guided and facilitated starting point to consider many business ethics whilst working up your ethical policy across multiple modules and using the videos. Basically, it's a way of deciding and defining what's important to you and how you have or how you're going to enact it within your business and leadership. So how did we make it? Well, 30 businesses across the Northeast have fed into its development, and thank you to all of those. And we had a core 6, who I would call as being the final core grafters that really got it to this final point. Along the way and along the journey, we've had some really rich discussion, lots of research, and it's been so useful and valuable to have a real melting pot of insights from our business community to really help us shape this. It's important to note that it's been developed by businesses across different sectors for businesses. It very much is a tool for business. And it's supposed to be an enabling tool, something positive to help you evolve and to help you grow. So as I said, it's structured in modules. This can be taken in bite-sized chunks and revisited. It's not meant to just be done once. It's meant to be done over and over again, as many times as you want and in real time. It also helps you create a really safe space to explore business ethics, your business ethics. It's really important for you to understand what you do and what you really fundamentally care about, and also what you don't really care about. The things you don't care about, you might not shout them off the top of a mountain to the rest of the world, but it is important that you identify them and understand how it affects your business decision making. So I encourage you to use this toolkit as a way of exploring business ethics, especially in the widest possible sense, including some more activist and social issues. Whilst this may feel uncomfortable to some, or for others, maybe not necessarily a priority during the pandemic, it's still important to know your position in these issues because they do affect your business and they may be important to your customers, your social media audience, and your network. And not considering them is leaving you open to a huge amount of risk. And this toolkit can help you as a business work through that risk and mitigate it. I personally have worked through the toolkit for my business as Culture Vulture, and I took so much value away from it. For me, it really helped me identify what my non-negotiables were in business and identify the types of people and the clients that I want to work with. I now have a set of criteria that all my clients have to tick or be committed to working towards in some way so that I can ensure the values, my values, and the things that are important to me are also important to my clients and demonstrated really clearly. Yes, that means I turn down work sometimes, but that's okay. But it also means that I know exactly who I am, who I'm working with, how I'm represented, and that anyone with a connection to my business is a positive representation of me. I'd just like to end my little bit here with a small provocation and something that I definitely thought about throughout when I was using the toolkit, something that I really stand by. And if you've read my NIBE blog, read the NIBE blog, you'll know that I believe in this a lot. So my provocation is that your business ethics are not where you stand in a position of comfort when everything is all good, that your business ethics are where you stand during challenges and controversies, and that includes during a pandemic. So there's never been a better time for you to do it. And I believe that our business ethical toolkit could be the start for you to creating some real positive change in your business, increased understanding of your business, and positive action.
Love it, Hortz. And it's always great, isn't it, to finish with a provocation, because that actually is why we started this process in the first place. And just picking up something that's come through on the chat to me from Catherine, is this relevant to startup businesses? Yes, it absolutely is. When we engage with those 30 businesses from around the region, they were corporates, some were startups, some were self-employed people, they were from completely different sectors. We just went out on a broad call and we reacted to what was coming in and have talked to people along the way. The other thing that we have done, Catherine was also asking about the Julian Richards Good Business Charter. There are a lot of good business charters. So what we've done is we've looked at those. I think some of those are actually mentioned in the research materials that we are including as part of the module. But we thought that there was still room for us to have something in the middle that was almost like a do-it-yourself guide. And to be able to do, I think, what Hortz has just described, which is, actually looking in this mirror, I'm looking at me, I have to sleep with me, should I be doing this or should I not? And at times like this, it's particularly pertinent, I think, to ask those questions, because it isn't easy. Hortz, as we know, is a director, self-declared director of NIBE, but we thought it'd be really interesting to hear from somebody who is not a director of NIBE, and that's Emily Bentley, who's the co-owner of the ever-expanding range of coffee shops, Bentley's coffee shops in the Tees Valley in North Yorkshire, whose business was acclaimed actually at the recent Tees Businesswomen Awards as a business that the Tees Valley needed more of because of its ethical values. We asked her through our partnership with the Tees Valley Business Club to have a go with the toolkit and to hear what she felt about it. Emily, over to you.
What an introduction. Thank you very much, Caroline. Lovely to see everybody. As Caroline said, I'm one of the co-owners of Bentley's Coffee Shop. And actually, sort of going back to what Catherine had asked Caroline just earlier, we are only a startup. We started in 2019, so we are very new to all this business stuff. But it's always been important from the day one since we started to look after people and do the right thing and select our suppliers and supply chain and everything else that we do based on the fact of looking in the mirror and knowing what's right. So when sort of through the business club, of which I am a director of as well, and Chair Jane Reynolds is also on this call, I was pleased to help to have a go and see where I got to, and sort of started that journey actually before Christmas, and found it really easy to follow. I love the videos. Well done, guys, for those pieces to camera. You know, very, very helpful scene setters, and there's obviously been such a lot of thought put into this, and that really does shine through as you go through the sort of 48 questions, which you might look at and think, oh, 48 questions. It's not daunting. You know, as Hart said, it's bite size into modules. You can come pick it up and put it back on again. You know, it's really flexible, and it's scalable as well, because I was thinking about it from a Bentley's perspective, from a personal perspective, and then you can transfer it. So I am employed elsewhere as well, and that's a PLC, and you could reflect exactly the same whether you're doing it for a startup or a PLC business, and it's just very clever. It's been done very clever, so congratulations, guys. So and what I found helpful as well is being a new business as well, and we didn't have some of these policies and things in place in writing. It's very helpful to start forming those thoughts to actually get something that's fit for purpose, but then offering NIBE's own policy to then say, but here, this is what we've done, and you can fit this in with what you're doing, which is also fantastic. And I think I've got 5 minutes, but you know, Caroline, do boot me off, because you know how I can talk. But yeah, and I think as well, because of the situation with the pandemic, all of the coffee shops are shut at the moment. All of our team has been furloughed, and it's really difficult to run through this as a business owner. It's good for myself, but then I can think, well, actually, when things get back to being whatever the new normal will be, then it's a nice sort of thing then to then involve. You have to involve the team. You know, it's not just me, it's not just the other owners, it's about involving everybody and get everybody thinking, you know, sort of about the things that they do and how that's reflected and everything like that. And so it's good that you can then rerun it, redo it, do the exercises from a personal development perspective as well for team members. I think it's going to be really great tool and valuable for that as well. So yeah, well done, guys, and get on it and do it.
What a fantastic endorsement. And I think I'm going to embarrass you again, Emily, because, you know, I would really.
Well, I'm wearing red, so that I'm not blushing.
Yeah, all right then. Well, it just goes back to what Graham was saying, that, you know, during a pandemic, we've had examples of really good and really bad behaviour. And actually, you know, as you've just said, you're a startup business. You started up in 2019. You were not mature enough a business to be able to get some of the grant support that was coming in. But you still wanted to pay your the early members of staff because it was the right thing to do. And it's that sort of thing, I think, which is that singles out the businesses that we all want to be or to be associated with, because it's, you know, and you said that, you know, of course it's got more difficult, but just to sort of be able to stick something in the ground and say, this is, you know, I want to behave like this. And I know that there are other examples of that in the hospitality sector, other examples in the retail, in corporate, where it's been particularly tough, actually, not necessarily, well, actually, yes, in some big corporate, it has in big corporate retail, but actually where you are in hospitality, retail, public houses, restaurants, some of whom are on this call, it's really tough. And yet these people are still doing the right things for the right reasons. So thank you, Emily, and thank you for actually making the time to look at this. Now, we've had a lot of talking heads, including me talking too much, I think, really. So now let's do a bit of participation. Anna Ryder from our partners at Mortal Fools are going to come and run a participatory session with us on values and business ethics, and why. Well, I hope we're going to find out why it's so important in a different way. Anna, over to you, and perhaps you could use the opportunity to tell us a bit about Mortal Fools.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that for anyone who gets scared of the word participation, I'll also throw in reflective. So if Hort's put in our provocation there, I think maybe hopefully this exercise we reach at the end of this will be something of a reflective exercise for you. But yeah, hi, I'm Anna from Mortal Fools. And for people who don't know, Mortal Fools is an award-winning drama, theatre and creative learning charity. We're a growing business, which is obviously quite good to say in the current climate, quite a rare thing potentially in the current climate. We're based in Northumberland and working across the wider north. We create innovative, creative projects and dynamic, high-quality theatre, which is by professional artists working with co-creators such as young people and communities. And all our work helps people to connect, to have fun and to grow together is kind of the ethos behind it. We're very passionate about the arts, and we know that when they're used well, they have the power to change and enrich lives. All our work is collaborative, it's people-focused, contemporary and socially engaged. And our work often gives safe spaces for young people and adults to figure out what's important to them, to find their voice, to make sense of the world around them. And the theatre productions we make are a means of doing that too, but with a wider audience. So I guess lots of the ethical and social issues that you might be thinking about in your business and in the wider world at the moment, they're often themes in our productions, and hopefully in watching them, they become an invitation to look at the world a little bit differently. And often that can be when linked to our youth theatre work, through the eyes of young people in the Northeast and what fiercely matters to them, which, having worked with them, I can tell you is social and ethical issues massively matters to the young at the moment. Like many of you, the pandemic has been a really big challenge for us at Mortal Fools, and the majority of our work has been moved online, which includes our work with young people and the Connect training and professional development programme that we run for organisations and individuals. And all this pivoting is probably the right word, breaking away from the norm has provided us with a really amazing opportunity, I guess is how we viewed it, for us to innovate, rethink, reframe, reflect and challenge the ways that we're working and refocus our company values, what's important to us, and how can we make those really positive changes. Even for a company that has always considered itself socially minded and kind of prides itself on living by our values through the activities we do, we're constantly learning, we're constantly making mistakes and evolving and absorbing the world around us. We really believe the power of reflection, and it's a really important tool in our Connect programme training that I work a lot on, which offers kind of dynamic and effective approaches to developing leadership practice, and that contains loads of opportunity to reflect as a business. And actually we really encourage businesses and individuals to make space to do some of the reflection. It's a really noisy and it's a really different world at the moment, and actually taking the time to pause and reflect on what you're doing, whether it's still achieving the goals that you are aiming for, what's important to you, as Hort said, what's not important to you, because that's equally important, what your lived experience is, where you're at, where you want to be personally, professionally, and most importantly, I guess to us, what changes you can make and what you want to make. So Mortal Fools think the NIBE, the Business Ethics Toolkit, is like a really great and accessible way to start that process. And the first few modules particularly, even though they're very action focused, are kind of tools for reflection. So that's something to kind of really highlight there. So continuing with that theme of reflection, I'm going to lead us on a bit of a participatory thing. So I hope you're all prepared for that. Preferably, I'd have people with their cameras on. If you're not comfortable with that, there are ways of participating anyway, so never fear. What I'm going to get everyone to do at first is just demonstrate to me that they know where their camera is, by putting their thumb over it. So just demonstrate to me that you're aware where your camera is and just cover yourself up with your thumb. Excellent. If you're going to join in with this and want to join in this but with your camera off, please feel free to use the reaction buttons as well. So we use this as an exercise at the start of some of our Connect training. It's often a really quick way of connecting a group, unifying a group as well, and finding shared interests, shared themes, and kind of finding out who's in the room. So it's a game called Anyone Who. You might have played this before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to cover your camera. I'm going to read a series of statements out, beginning with anyone who. If it is a statement that applies to you or you relate to, I'm going to ask you to remove your thumb, and then we'll just have a look at who else in the room is in agreement with you and where everyone stands today. Can I get a thumbs up that I've explained that clearly? We're all on the same page. We're all excellent. Okay. So when you're ready, covering your camera up. So anyone who has learned something new about their business or about themselves in the last year. That's a big majority there, isn't it? That's a big majority. Okay, covering yourself back up. Anyone who has experienced a few hiccups when adapting their business to the new climate. Oh, I appreciate the honesty in this room. Yeah, it can sometimes be hard to own that, but I think you've got through this year quite scot-free if you haven't experienced at least some hiccups in things that you're trying. I think at Mortal Falls, we really encourage kind of a growth mindset that even though it might feel like we've had a failure, it's always just part of the process. It's never a setback. It's always right. That was part of it. Okay, covering yourself back up. Anyone who feels like they understand the issues that are important to their networks and customers. Okay, we've got a majority there. We've got some people a bit questioning. I'm enjoying Caroline's kind of, oh, am I there or am I not? I agree with Ross. I love the mosaic of the red. I think it comes up with such weird colours for different people. So thank you for noticing that. Okay, covering yourself back up. Anyone who uses their social media channels to speak out about what is important to them. Yeah, okay. So we've got some people who use it for that. As Hort said, it can sometimes be that as a business, that can be a really good way of connecting people with your values. If you've got some strongly held ethics. Phil Jackman fears he speaks out too much on his social media channels, he said there. But actually using social media to connect with people and to really communicate those messages can be a really effective tool. Okay, covering yourself back up. On that line, and as maybe more of an omission, anyone who fears or feels like their children know more about technology than they do. Oh, we've got about half the group there. Yes, as people who've spent a long time adapting to business, I know quite a lot of people who are also in business that feel like a little bit embarrassed that their teenager probably has the answer to the thing that they spent 3 hours Googling, but their teenager probably would have known instantaneously. Okay, covering yourself back up, we've got 3 more of these. Anyone who has the desire to be more socially minded as a business in the future. That's interesting. That's quite a majority. Again, as Hort said, it's not kind of, our ethics all sit in different ways with different people. That might not resonate with you. Or you might actually feel very satisfied already about how socially minded you are as a business and think, I don't need more than that. Okay, covering yourself back up. Anyone who has desire to be more climate conscious as a business in the future. A lot of the room there. Not everybody again, and that's absolutely fine, but a lot of people have that as an interest at the moment. Okay, and final one covering up. This is a bit of a plug. You'll sense where this one's going. Anyone who is going to download and have a go at the NIBE Business Ethics Toolkit after today. Yes, look at that room. Oh, Caroline, I hope you're happy. That feels like you've got a room full of people that are going to be engaging.
Thanks,
like I
thanks
said,
for that. Yeah, that was
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We find that a really good way of taking the temperature of a room and just checking in with people and knowing that we're kind of not alone in some of these feelings at the moment. So thank you. I'll pass back to Caroline.
Thank you. That was wonderful, and it is, you know, I think, you know, what I said right at the beginning, and other people have echoed all the way along. This isn't easy, you know, and it's really nice to know that you're being supported, and actually there are very often no wrong or right answers. You know, it's tough, and it's even tougher when the world out there is very tough. But it's having that thing about moral compass, and you say, you know, and as you said, we use wrong, you know, different descriptor. Moral compasses are different to, you know, whoever. Now I'm just having a look to see if we've got any. I'm looking at my view. I'm probably not doing the right thing. I'm going to put the gallery view up because it would be just good to know if anybody had any questions, because we've got a bit of time. Lovely to see people commenting in the chat box. But if anyone wanted any clarification, we could pick it up here. Not yet at the moment. So I think, Phil, could I just ask you, while people are thinking maybe, where to, you know, more of the sort of detail about our toolkit.
Am I allowed to ask a question first?
Yes, you are allowed to ask questions.
Okay, because I'm really interested to ask Anna actually if the art scene, if that's the right word, has been particularly badly hit in terms of ethical practices. People expecting people to do work for nothing, and people expect to perform for nothing through these very difficult times.
I think that, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's very hard. I'm a freelance artist, and at the start of this, all my work disappeared. 2020 was full of incredibly exciting projects that will hopefully come back for me, but for a couple of months that went. And actually the problem being that I'm not alone in that in any way, shape or form, and that actually when people approach you with work now, sometimes the fees are slightly lower than they should be, but they know that everybody is quite desperate for work, so that you'll probably be happy to accept what is the lower end of the spectrum, as opposed to some companies that are working really hard to make sure that their pay is fair, and that they understand that climate as well. So I think that that's a massive one. And I also think that unfortunately with the arts, there can sometimes be a feeling that we should all just be grateful that we're doing it. So it can sometimes be that the expectation to work for free around the work that you're doing. And while a lot of the skills that I have as a kind of a business in myself are probably what we'd class as soft skills. And so it can be quite hard to define that sometimes, and people don't often realize that actually you're bringing a huge amount of experience or kind of personal skills to something, and therefore don't feel like they have to pay you for the additional meetings that you're doing, for example. That can be a real one. So suddenly you're in 4 meetings before the 1 workshop you're doing, and you've not been paid for that time in the slightest. Which can be really tricky, and I'm seeing nods of agreement, so I'm sure it factors into other parts of the sector. But I think us at Mortal Fools have spent a long time thinking a lot about why the arts are important in the world at the moment, I think, and that often has a lot to do with our ethics and justifying the reasoning behind that, and why people should be interested in investing their money as businesses in this sort of project. So yeah, but yeah, it's been a devastating year for the arts. It would be absolutely wrong of me to pretend otherwise. It's been utterly devastating to the sector. Yeah,
I'm sure it'll get better.
And thank you, Phil. Thanks for asking the first question. There always has to be one, so thank you very much for that. Tom, did I see your hand coming up before I go on to the chat? Tom Harrison.
Yes, it was just a quick question. How do you intend to try to get this out in the wider context to everybody in the Northeast? So you do literally get hundreds and hundreds of businesses involved.
I think it's a great question, Tom. I think with your help is the answer. But I'd like to ask Phil, Adam, Hortz, you know, I mean, we're desperately wanting to use everybody who's got a social media, you know, social network feed, who's, you know, big on Twitter, getting it out there. This is just the start, isn't it? Having, you know, a sort of patchwork of faces in a virtual room. But, you know, if you like what you've heard today, please help us get it out there, because actually it then feeds into Hortz's next question is what's next? you know, version 2.0. Well, we can only do version 2.0 if we get feedback from more businesses, large, small, startup, the self-employed, from right the way around the region.
Well, Caroline, I think Hort should answer the question of how we're going to get that out, because that's
Go on then, Hort.
expertise. But can I just say there is no version 2. It'll be a constant build on this, and the more feedback we get, the more we'll change it. And it's very easy the way that Adam's designed it to make those changes. And so please get them out. Sorry, Hort.
So it'll just be after this sort of launch, we'll be pushing it out via various marketing channels. That will be largely my responsibility, pushing it out to different audiences, getting feedback, whether that is to universities, small businesses, different sectors, young people, all sorts, and really kind of, you know, getting it across the North East business community as part of a coordinated campaign, really, and really leaning into some of the topics that we believe that right now is an opportunity for people to really reflect and to make some positive change. So to be using it as championing it as an enabling tool, as opposed to another thing that a business might have to consider. So it's all about positioning it really, whilst being mindful that the business landscape is challenging at the moment and what everyone's facing, but this toolkit could help them.
Thank you, Hort. While you've got your microphone on, I'm just picking up another one from Catherine, actually. Would it be right in them, just following on from that, is there a prize for doing it, therefore, a badge or a certificate, or is it because it's an enabling tool, the prize is just being able to do more and better?
Yeah, so that really is kind of the prize, and we would love people to share kind of their process and what value they found out from that process of going through it. We were really keen to not necessarily have an end point, as in like you've done it, because from my experience in business, if you put an end point on something, people might do the toolkit and then put it away in a drawer and then never look at it ever again. And actually, we want people to revisit it all the time, that it becomes, as you know, you would revisit your business plan or your marketing plan, and it becomes an evolving, living, breathing kind of part of your business. And what we're using as prompts on each module actually become just questions that you start asking yourself every day or every week or in projects or whatever, and it becomes a lot more as a natural kind of process that you automatically go through.
Thank you for that. There's another one here from somebody, I'm not sure because it's just an initial, but do we know if other parts of the country are producing similar tools? Yes, they are. I went to we were just beaten, weren't we, Phil Hort and colleagues, by the Institute of Business Ethics, and I went to their that launch the other day. But what we're wanting to do is obviously work in partnership with the Institute down in London, and work more closely with them on more of a sort of national rollout, so that it's, because we're only going to make a change, going back to Tom's point, actually, if people work together, spread the word, feed in, feed out, and, you know, keep it growing. And there's a question here, because I know we've got colleagues from, I think, 2 of the region's universities, maybe 3. From Peter at Hexham TV. Is the toolkit being integrated in the local university business courses? Would any of our local business colleagues like to pick that up?
Caroline, I actually replied to Peter.
Oh, did you?
Yes, just privately, but yeah. So this is Ron Beadle from Northumbria here. I think because it is for businesses, the answer is some courses but not others. So an obvious one is our program in entrepreneurship, where students have to be setting up a business to do it. So that's clearly one. Most of the people, even on master's professional courses, are employees rather than business owners. And I think, I mean, it'd be interesting to talk further with Phil and Hort about this, but I think it's probably best at the level of business owners first, rather than people who are employees primarily, but we'll see.
Thanks, Ron. Phil, did you want to come in at all on that? And I can see Emily wanting to come in after you, Phil.
Just quickly, I think it's suitable for anybody in business, but I accept Ron's, I think, what was behind his premise, that it's easier to influence a business if you actually own it or senior in it rather than. But you know, you've got to start somewhere, and if you want to be the change, if you want to see your organisation change, wherever position you're on, then you've got to make that change yourself and understand where you go. So I think it's for all levels, but I do accept that it's easier if you are in a position of influence.
Thank you. Emily, moving straight to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that obviously it is geared around the business as it is at the moment, but perhaps looking from an employability point of view from people coming through the education system, to know it's important to them to be able to seek out the employer that's right for them as well. I think it was Anna that mentioned, or it might have been Hortz, about it's more important to the next generation coming through about the ethics and the values and all of that kind of thing now more than ever. So as part of being an employee potential looking for an employer, then maybe that's another iteration for the future to sort of so that things are aligned. You know, certainly, you know, sort of my past employers, my first employer I chose because of who they were and what they were doing and how they behaved, not for money reasons. So.
That's great. Tom, I know you want to come back in again, but can I just pick up Jeff's question, because it's been there from it. Jeff Moore, you wanted to ask about tracking and how much the toolkit's being used and how effective it's being.
Do you want me to come in on that one, Caroline?
Yes, please, Adam.
Yeah, so I think, and we can tie it a little bit into 2.0, because I think there's, as everyone said, I think the important bit is that we're getting feedback on what's there. This is the starting point, and then it's iterating onwards. In terms of the tracking aspect of it, we'll see how many people are going through it just through the software that we've used, so we'll know sort of how much it's being used. And hopefully, if people can be sending that, we do rely on people to send the feedback. We discussed a number of different levels, what information we could be getting back. But I think in terms of if I saw a step change such as a 2.0, it would actually be around that kind of scorecarding or something like that. So not accreditation, but something where people get an opportunity to quantify some of the the qualitative work that this is really actually all about. It's about thinking, it's about reflection, it's about but actually being able to quantify some of that through scorecards and actually make that not a one-off thing that you do, but actually something that you assess, on regular periods and get reminded about, and building that into but also looking at the different exercises and how they could be developed online to have a bit more of an interactive feel, or involve other members of your team, or to be a bit more interactive. At the moment it's more here's the information, go away, have a think, work on it, and then come back and reflect and move on to the next bit. So I think there's we could go endlessly into the various different areas that it could be developed, but I think that concept of a regular scorecard where we can be the key word I think that Jeff's used there is about how effective it's been, or the impact that it's having, and I think that will be absolutely key. Just another point on that is that I think one of the early things that we've discovered that we will probably need to work on as soon as we can is actually making a bit of a simplified version of the toolkit, something that's a bit more short, that takes a lot shorter time to do it, so that almost as an entry point to organizations, because actually a big part about getting people to use this toolkit I think will be the kind of changing hearts and minds and the culture change, as much as it will be the actual process of going through it. It's actually getting people to understand, as we've talked about here, and we've got a captive audience in this room, but I think getting a lot of other companies to think about these things is a bigger challenge. But we wanted to get the process right, test the process out, and see how that goes first, and then refine it as we go. But hopefully that helps to give a bit of some of the ideas that we've discussed so far.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks very much. Tom, just a quickie from you, and then I'll hand back to Phil.
It was really just an observation what Emily was saying. My understanding when I was thinking about it, it isn't just for the employers, because I think when you've set those standards and those values, you then need to communicate them to employees. And when you're in a larger company, 1,500 people, 5,000 people spread across multiple locations, how do you get consistency of service and values? Because you can't supervise and monitor people 100% of the time. So you've got to embed them in the company. And if you've gone through a process and you come out at the end with what you think your values are, you've still got to communicate them to your employees, not just your clients, but your employees. So I think there is a there is another step beyond actually preparing the toolkit. How do you communicate it? Just an observation.
Thank you, Tom. And I think with that, this is it's iterative, this, isn't it? I think, as colleagues have said, and it's just great that we've got people from so many different business practices here who hopefully will be able, as Hort's already invited you to do, to help us spread the message and get it percolated out so that we can work on it together. Phil, I think final word to you so that we close on time, if you may. If we may, and just remind people how to get hold of it, how we need their help to get it out there into the community.
Yes, so what I'm going to do, Caroline, is just show that screen. Can everybody see that? Can you see anything there or not? No, never mind. I'll stop sharing it there. Don't know what happened there. Did you get a glimpse of the screen there or not? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so that's really just to show you that it's live and it's on the front page of the website. So if you just go on the NIBE website, you can see it. It's right at the top. You can't miss it, and it takes you straight into it. Or alternatively, you can go through the URL that Adam's sent out to you. So I think it's been some fantastic conversations here today, and I think everybody's right. Tom's last point was absolutely valid. In a way, it's just as important for customers to be able to judge businesses that they wish to deal with or don't, as it is for people to be able to judge their own position or the position of their employees and their employers. So I think the kit can be used in many ways, and we need to develop, I think, perhaps to make it easier for some of those to address. Next stages, I think, for us are to get this embedded into the local business community and to spread its information as far and wide as possible. And if I could just ask you all to do that, to help us out to get that into all corners of the region, I think it's perhaps a great way for us to differentiate our region as a great place to deliver business, as a fair place, as an ethical place to deliver, rather than just another region of the UK. And I think the next thing we're going to work on is how we can help you to run through this, if there's any interest in actually running through courses with businesses to help them to deliver these kind of services in a workshop type environment.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for those who contributed, our panelists, the people who asked questions. This is just the beginning. So I think on the course there are, or on the modules, there are contact buttons. And so if you have any questions or want to get back in touch, you can do that at the beginning of each of the pages on the website. And really just very, very keen to keep this dialogue open so that we can all learn together, and how we use it for, our teams, our staff, our customers, and, broaden it to everybody. So thanks everybody for giving us an hour of your time today. I think we're bang on, because people who know me know that we have to be bang on to get people to their next meetings. So thank you so much, everybody, for being with us and starting to spread the word. Thank you.